All right. Greetings, everyone. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Faiz Yazid, and I am really excited to this 13th episode of Unpacking IVCO 2023 blog post. So today we are going to have a special chat to discuss IVCO 2023 blog post topics and make it accessible for everyone, especially those who don't have time to read it at all. So our special guest today is Senabu Gay, who wrote Nurturing a Dynamic Volunteer Community, the Power of Public Engagement. And we are going to break it down in this interview. So let's start. So hi, Ms. Senabu Gay, maybe a short introduction. Would you like to introduce yourself and say hello to the audience?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Sina Bugay, and I am the current Volunteer Engagement Officer at Crossroads International. And I am the author of the article, Nurturing a Dynamic Volunteer Community, the Power of Public Engagement.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for making your time with us tonight. So, quick one, I think, because the topic is really interesting on the term of public engagement. So, maybe to the first question, I think, what is the concept of public engagement in the context of volunteer management, and why it is important to all the NGOs out there?
Yeah. So public engagement is a very important concept in the Canadian context for NGOs in Canada, as most of us are mainly funded by the government, so Public Affairs Canada, Global Affairs Canada, sorry. So I'll give you two definitions. So at Crossroads International, we see public engagement as the act of informing and educating the public, the Canadian public, acting as a conduit for the voices of our southern partners and debunking myths and misconceptions around international development, aid and trade, and all while inspiring people to take action. So it's all about informing the Canadian public about the work that we do with our southern partners through our volunteers. And the aim, the final goal, is to really to incite the Canadian public to take action on the work that we do. So Global Affairs Canada, their official definition is public engagement. They see it as a progressive continuum, like I said, so from being informed to improving understanding through education, leading to an informed action and long-term engagement. So as you can see, it's very similar to our own definition, and the notion of public engagement, as I said, is a very important notion for Canadian NGOs. As we also have yearly targets that we need to meet in terms of informing, the Canadian public. So we have a specific number that we need to meet every year in the context of the funding that we receive. So that's why it's very important for us to make sure that the work that our volunteers do, we also find a way to communicate it to the Canadian public and to the public in general.
All right. Thank you for the answer of the first question. So whenever I went through your piece of writing for this blog post, the first pinpoint that has been pointed out is involving volunteers in the fundraising process. So let me ask you one thing. How does involving volunteers in fundraising at the early stages of their engagement impact their sense of ownership and connection to the organization's cause?
Yes, that's a great question. The first thing I would like to say is that Crossroads International, like I mentioned, is mainly funded by Global Affairs Canada, but also a big part of our funding comes from individuals, donors, and foundations. So we also do rely on fundraising, and involving our volunteers in this fundraising process at the early stages of their engagement has a great impact on their sense of ownership, like you mentioned, and connection to the organization's mission and cause, right? So when volunteers are brought into the fundraising efforts from the beginning, it cultivates, a deeper understanding of the work that we do, our mission that we train them on, and the importance of the work that they are about to go and do during their mandate, right? So for them, it helps them have a better understanding even of the work that they're about to do. If they're able to fundraise, that means they're able to talk about Crossroads projects, mission, and that means they're also able to talk about their mandate, right? So it's also a way of making sure that they have a deep understanding of the work that they're about to go and do. And also, it's to kind of train them on storytelling, because when I talk about public engagement earlier and asking them to do public engagement about their work, the main thing about public engagement is to be able to tell a story, right? So I think this trains them to do that in the early stages by speaking to their communities, their family and friends, and maybe getting them to donate to Crossroads cause. And also, because the way that we even get them to do that is just by training. We give them all the tools and materials to do the fundraising, and they're able to do all on their own, create their own profile. And, so it shows us that they're able to use these resources on their own and make it happen. So they develop also a sense of pride and dedication, right, to representing Crossroads, because one of the main things that we request of them is really, what I should say that we try to get out of them, is to make them feel like they belong, right? And that they are ambassadors of Crossroads. So all of that, I think, contributes to it, and it really strengthens, the relationship with the organizations, like I said, because we see them as integral contributors to the success of the work that we do. So to summarize, I would say that involving volunteers in fundraising at the early stages creates a sense of ownership, a deeper connection to the organization's cause, and instills a strong belief in their ability to drive positive change.
All right, so that's interesting. Whenever you've mentioned fundraising and how actually throughout fundraising, volunteers can play their role, leverage their networks and communities, and actually turn out to raising awareness towards all of your impactful initiatives. So, talking about raising awareness, can you explain how volunteers sort of like proactively raise awareness during their mandate, and why this or such thing is really significant to every single NGOs out there?
Yeah. That's a great question, because like I mentioned, their mandates are with our southern partners. So all of our volunteers, they go in African countries to do their mandates. But like I mentioned, public engagement is also very important for us in relation to the Canadian public. So how do they do this? Usually, what we do is that while they're on their mandate, we train them on, like I said, storytelling, how to take photos, how to conduct interviews with beneficiaries, etc. So while they're on their mandate, they are collecting all of the information that they can to document the work that they do and the impact that they're having on the partner organizations and on the communities. So we work hand in hand with the volunteers. So while they're working, they send us content, and we make sure that we share it on our social media, which will then inform the Canadian public. But also on the ground, of course, our volunteers have public engagement activities with the local stakeholders that they're working with, right? So they organize events. For example, we have key international development events where, for example, the International Volunteering Day on December 5th, which we usually have an active volunteers have the opportunity to talk about the work that they do. So raising awareness where they are actually working, but also for us making sure to relay the information with our Canadian public audience. And so this is a great collaboration that we have with the team in Canada. But also, I would say that not only during their mandates that we encourage them to do public engagement, even after volunteers are done. So when they're returning volunteers, we encourage them to also be involved in our events. For example, every year we have the annual volunteer conference, where we really the main aim is really to highlight our volunteers, their success, and give them the platform to talk about, you know, the accomplishments that they've done during their mandates. So this is a public event that is open to, you know, all returning volunteers and of course the Canadian public in general. For example, in November, we'll have our first volunteer conference in London, Ontario. So, you know, we will have the London public and some maybe government representatives, some other NGO colleagues, and you know, alumni will be at the heart of this event. And this is also a public engagement event where they can raise awareness about their work that they've done previously, right? So just showing how while they're on their mandate, they can do this awareness raising even after, and actually even before, right? Because we were talking about fundraising at the early stages, and fundraising does also involve doing some awareness raising before. So it is a continuum.
Those are fruitful events that you've mentioned, you know, and how it can be continuous. And actually, I think one term that I can relate to all of this is how it's such a crucial role to actually instill the sense of belonging in the heart of all the volunteers towards the organization. So, talking upon this particular feelings, the sense of belonging in the volunteers, what strategies and initiatives does your organization, Crossroads International, use to retain and engage volunteers after their mandates, and how does sort of this contribute to the organization's mission overall?
Yeah. I think the very first thing I can think of when you talk about sense of belonging is definitely our I Am a Crossroader campaign. So we call our volunteers crossroaders, and we have a campaign called I Am Crossroader. So oftentimes you will see volunteers that are done with their mandates, they will refer themselves as crossroaders, right? So I think this is already, you know, one key thing that we have this term that only our volunteers can refer to, right? And I Am a Crossroader campaign is very large. It involves a lot of things. So for example, of course, being a volunteer with Crossroads, but also it means being an ambassador of Crossroads, right? So we have constantly opportunities that we try to share with our volunteers. So for example, we have, you know, as a Canadian organization, we have a whole group of organizations in Canada that have different types of events. So we make sure that we always, it's not only limited to what Crossroads do, right? So making sure that we communicate these opportunities for them, because also what we are trying to do is making sure that we support them with their professional careers afterwards. So thing that we are launching actually is a newsletter just for our volunteers, where we share opportunities for the coming month, important dates for Crossroads where we might have events. So of course, inviting them, like I said, to be speakers at our events or be a part of, you know, organizing some of our events, our public events. So there are always special invitations to our volunteers and alumni. And also a Facebook group just with volunteers, making sure that, you know, they feel like they are a part of this community, and that even after their mandates, they still have a place to be and to find each other again and share opportunities with each other, talk to each other, and you know, just giving them those platforms. And a sense of belonging, when I think about that too, I can think, like I said, about our donors, right? We are heavily depending also on fundraising, and most of our donors actually are alumni. So previous volunteers, Crossroaders, and they feel so dearly about Crossroads that they continue to donate. Some even, you know, donate monthly. Some even have Crossroads on their testaments. You know, it's like really caring about Crossroads work and cause, and still continuing to support us in ways that they can, and in this case, financially. So I would say strategies, definitely these public events. For example, talking again about the volunteer conference that I mentioned, the keynote speaker that will be at that conference is one of the founding members of Crossroads. in the
That's
1960s,
interesting.
you know? Yes. So just to let you know, even after over 60 years, to celebrate actually Crossroads 65 years, we still have alumni from the first, times that are still going to be involved. So it really shows how it's working. Some of the
Yeah,
strategies or
true.
issues that we have, we are retaining volunteers. And again, even about mandates, it's very rare that we have volunteers that do only one mandate. Usually they renew, they do other mandates, they take 2, 3 mandates, right? That shows you how they are always like the retention rate, I would say, is pretty high. So we're happy about that.
Yeah. Thank you for every single sharing that you pointed out tonight. That's really, I would say, motivating to see how actually the legacy is still there and it's continuing to grow, and the organization is really keeping track of every single one. Crossroad is as what you've mentioned. So talking upon this self-development or growth of um, the volunteers themselves, how do volunteers transition from their volunteer roles to more involved positions within the organization itself? And how does this situation strengthen their commitment to Crossroads International? May you share any?
Yes, that's a great
Mm-hmm.
question. And I think I ended my article with a testimonial from
Mm-hmm.
Larios, which is one of our former volunteers, so a crossroader, that now became a staff member of Crossroads in Kédougou in Senegal. So I think that's a beautiful story that speaks to your question. So yeah, definitely we do have examples of volunteers that end up being involved within the organization afterwards. And I think this is a great example. So, like I said, we are not shy about involving our volunteers in helping us for certain events or even just being or representing us at events, right? So, in the case of Larios, for example, he was a communication officer or a communication, I would say, volunteer for a project, a specific project that we had in Kedugu. And he did such a great job. When we see the amazing work that our volunteers do, we have to, be grateful and show them recognition, right? So we were really happy with the work that he did, and a position opened up about communication officer, and he applied and he got hired. So I don't know, it's really a straightforward process, but I would say that volunteers transitioning from their volunteer role to more involved positions within Crossroads is really also a testament to our organization's commitment in
Mm-hmm.
recognizing and nurturing talent within our community, right? So it doesn't only show growth and development for volunteers, but also it strengthens like their commitment to Crossroads, right? So like you said, how does it strengthen their commitment? Well, it's really, I think, showing them that recognition automatically strengthens their commitment to Crossroads in
Mm-hmm.
several meaningful ways, I would say. So yeah, I would say that being able to transition within the organization will just deepen again their understanding of our mission, values, and giving them more responsibilities and exposure, to other aspects of the work that we do that they might have not been aware of, can only yeah, deepen their perspective of the work that Crossroads do, and around challenges around gender equality in general, right? Because it's one thing to
Mm-hmm.
be a volunteer and to have a specific role for a specific project with a specific organization, partner organization, but then now being involved as a staff member will really obviously broaden the vision that they have about the organization, because it's not anymore only working in one specific area. It's seeing Crossroads
Mm-hmm.
as an entirety and having bigger responsibilities, and definitely will give them better understanding of how even international cooperation works, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it definitely strengthens their understanding and commitment in that way.
Yeah, true. I think that's really a strong testimonial whenever from a volunteer to the leader of such organization. They experience those um, situation first, and they know how to improve and what to add on upon the organization's mission and Crossroads International as a whole. So before we end our session today, so any last word perhaps to the viewers out there and listeners from Miss Senabuge towards the IVCO 2023?
Towards IVCO 2020. Yes, sure. So I would say, I had the honor to co-host IVCO last year with IBCR. So I know what it is and what it takes to organize such a huge, conference, international conference. And I am really looking forward to this year's in Malaysia. What I can say to potential participants is if you are working in a volunteering corporation, or you are looking maybe to be involved one day, IVCO is definitely the place to be. You will get to meet multiple stakeholders in the field, and the topics of the sessions are very, very interesting, and I am looking forward to it for sure. I will be myself moderating a session on volunteering and climate action. So that one I'm particularly excited about. But yes, I would say very happy to be a part of IVCO.
All right. Miss Senabu, we'll be seeing you there for sure. I hope to meet you in person. And to everyone, that was all the time we had for the interview. What an insightful conversation we had today on the blog post, nurturing a dynamic volunteer community, the power of public engagement. So thank you, Ms. Senabu, for your time. To our viewers and listeners, do not forget to explore the conference website, www.ivco2023.org, to read the blog post and many more out there. So if you have not registered yet, this is your time to grab this opportunity to be a part of IVCO 2023 Kuala Lumpur. So stay tuned for the next episode, and goodbye.
Thank you.